I stood there silent, pine needles still clinging to my boots as the door closed behind me. The cinnamon-sweet air of the house clashed with the cold knot forming in my chest. "Don't touch the gifts. There's none for you." My daughter's voice rang louder than the laughter that followed. None for me. After decades of holidays, after the funeral I planned alone, after giving her power over every part of my life, now I was the exception. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The wreath on Leah's door was perfect, symmetrical, pine-scented, and smug. Ginny stood on the front step, knuckles hovering in the cold. Behind that door was the kind of holiday evening people posted about. Soft jazz playing under clinking glasses, matching pajamas, curated laughter. She knocked twice. The door swung open almost immediately. "There she is," Leah beamed. Voice bright but eyes scanning. "Come in. Shoes off at the door, please." Ginny stepped inside. The warmth hit her like a wall. Pine needles crackled faintly beneath her boots as she bent to unlace them. The house smelled like cinnamon and expectation. In the living room, the Christmas tree stood 10 feet tall and photograph ready. Presents spilled in ribbons and gold foil beneath it, stacked high like some glittering altar. Ginny's eyes flicked to the tags. Leah saw and smiled wider. "Don't touch the gifts," she said sharply. "There's none for you." The room stilled. A ripple of laughter followed, forced, too loud. Kevin, Leah's husband, chuckled, as if she'd just delivered a killer roast at a comedy club. The others, Aaron and Jake, and some woman Ginny didn't recognize, joined in hesitantly. Ginny's face didn't move. Her fingers curled around the strap of her purse. Then Aaron, quieter, unsure. "That wasn't funny," Leah waved her off. "Oh, relax, it's a joke. Ginny gets it." "I'm fine," Ginny said automatically. But her face, tight as a clenched fist, betrayed her. She crossed to the table, forcing her shoulders to relax. The dining room sparkled with candles, chargers, napkins folded like origami swans. It was beautiful, sure, but brittle, too perfect, a stage. Dinner passed in dull rhythm. Turkey was served, gravy passed. Conversation steered politely around landmines. Ginny nodded where appropriate, smiled when someone looked her way. But inside, she was watching everything. Leah's performative hostess act, Kevin's absent-minded laughter, Aaron's guilt glancing at her like a secret, the way Jake kept checking his phone like he couldn't wait to leave. No one asked Ginny about her new job, or her move, or why she came alone. No one asked anything. When dessert arrived, a too-sweet peppermint pie, Ginny stood. "I should head out," she said lightly, brushing imaginary crumbs from her sweater. "Oh," Leah blinked. "Already?" "I've got an early morning," Ginny smiled. "Thanks for dinner." Nobody argued. Not really. She slipped on her coat and opened the door herself. The cold slapped her skin, a relief after the suffocating warmth inside. As she stepped onto the porch, she heard Aaron behind her, quiet but urgent. "Ginny, wait." Ginny paused, half-turned. Her breath fogged in the winter air. "I didn't know she'd say that." "About the presents." Ginny nodded, lips pressed thin. "She knew what she was doing," she said. "She always does." And then, without waiting for an answer, Ginny descended the porch steps, her boots crunching against ice-crusted gravel. Behind her, the door creaked shut. She didn't cry in the car. She didn't scream or punch the steering wheel. She just stared out the windshield for a long time, hands motionless on the wheel, while snow began to fall, soft and soundless. Then, with a breath that sounded almost like a promise, she turned the key. The engine roared to life, but something in her had gone quiet. Ginny sat at the kitchen table the next morning, wrapped in her robe, hands cold despite the mug of coffee steaming between them. The snow outside hadn't stopped. Thick drifts blanketed the hedges like silence. Her phone buzzed once. Leah? A group photo from last night. Everyone smiling, no caption, just the picture. She didn't open it. Instead, she slid the photo aside and reached for the yellow accordion folder she hadn't touched in nearly 3 years. The paper was slightly warped with age and memory, but the contents were intact. The estate plan she'd drawn up after Stephen's funeral. Leah's name was printed on every second page: executor, power of attorney, sole beneficiary. Ginny's hands stilled. She let the folder hang open in her lap, and for a moment all she could hear was the hum of the refrigerator and the distant scrape of a snowplow. Why had she given Leah that power? It had seemed practical at the time. Leah was organized, emotionally detached, and had inserted herself into every part of the process after Stephen died. "You shouldn't have to think about these things right now," she'd said. And Ginny, raw and flattened with grief, had agreed. But now, rereading the lines under Leah's name, something inside her recoiled. How many times had Leah taken advantage of her silence? She remembered birthdays where Leah forgot her card, but reminded her to Venmo for the group gift. Remembered the trip to New Orleans Ginny had paid for in full after Leah's emergency furnace replacement, a story no one ever verified. Remembered Leah's running commentary on her life, her weight, her clothes, her job, always masked as concern, always just sharp enough to leave a mark. Ginny had called it loyalty. Leah had counted on that. From the hallway, the floor creaked. Della, her 13-year-old daughter, patted. In barefoot, already dressed, hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands. "Coffee smells burnt," Della mumbled, dropping into the seat across from her. "It is," Ginny said, without looking up. Della stared at the open folder, then glanced at her mother. "You reading your will?" she asked, deadpan. Ginny smiled faintly. "Just reviewing a few things." Della reached for a slice of toast from the counter, chewing slowly. Then, without looking up, "You always let her talk to you like a task." Ginny blinked. "What?" "Leah, you act like she's your job. Like if you keep showing up and checking her boxes, eventually she'll, I don't know, promote you or something." Ginny sat back in the chair. Della was watching her now, calm and unblinking in the way that only kids who'd grown up too fast ever were. "I'm not doing that anymore," Ginny said quietly. Della didn't nod, didn't smile, just stood, plate in hand. "Cool," she said, turning to the sink. "Just don't let her be the one who decides your last words." The line hit like a slap. Ginny watched her daughter walk down the hall and close the bathroom door. The click of it settling into the frame sounded final. She turned back to the folder, stared at Leah's name, inked so many times it might as well have been carved. Then she picked up a notepad from the junk drawer, tore off the first 3 messy pages, then wrote in neat block letters across the top, "Detachment." She began to list: remove Leah from will, reassign power of attorney inventory of assets, find Stephen's lawyer safe deposit access, get copies of medical directive. When she reached the bottom of the page, she hesitated, then wrote, "Talk to Della, everything." This time, Ginny set the pen down. She could feel the tremble in her fingers. Not fear, not even anger. Something deeper. Resolve. She picked up her phone and tapped through her contacts. She didn't have Greg Thorne's number saved, but she remembered the firm, Thorne and Kipley, LLP. Her thumb hovered over the call button. Then she pressed it. A calm male voice answered after 2 rings. "Thorne and Kipley." "Hi," Ginny said. "My name is Ginny Callahan. I'm a former client of Greg Thorne. My husband was Stephen Callahan." A beat. Then the receptionist's tone shifted. "Yes, of course, Mrs. Callahan. How can we help?" "I'd like to schedule an appointment," she said. "I need to make some changes." It was just past noon when Ginny heard the knock, not the mechanical rap of a delivery driver or the insistent rhythm of someone with news. Just a soft, human knuckle knock, 3 tentative taps on the front door. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and peeked through the window. "Aaron." Ginny opened the door, startled by the cold, but more startled by the sight of her niece standing there bundled in an oversized parka, cheeks pink from the wind, holding a paper bag in one hand and something small and framed in the other. "Hi," Aaron said, sheepish. "I know it's weird, just showing up." "No," Ginny said, stepping back, warmth bleeding into her chest before she could stop it. "It's not." Aaron walked in like someone testing old floorboards, carefully, not sure if she had the right. She handed over the paper bag first. "I made oatmeal cookies, with cranberries, not raisins, I swear." Ginny laughed under her breath. "You remembered." Aaron lifted the second item. "And I found this while cleaning out a drawer." She turned it around, a photo of the 2 of them at a beach picnic 5 years ago. Ginny in sunglasses, her arms sunburned, laughing mid-bite of a watermelon slice. Erin in braids and a NASA t-shirt, grinning like she was trying to show every tooth. Ginny stared at it. Where was this? Cape Henlopen, Erin said. The summer you rented that weird Airbnb with all the owl figurines. Ginny smiled, a full one this time. Stephen called it the Avian Crypt. Erin's eyes flicked to the side, just for a second, and Ginny felt the shift. The memory had landed in that space between light and loss. They sat down in the living room, knees close on the edge of the couch. Ginny folded the dish towel in her lap, then folded it again. I wanted to say this yesterday, Erin said, but I got scared, or maybe just used to it. I've watched her treat you like a project for years. Ginny looked at her. You don't deserve that kind of treatment, Erin said. Quiet but sure. Ginny exhaled, slow. I know, she said softly. I'm acting on it now. Erin nodded like she'd been waiting her whole life to hear that. I'm sorry for laughing, she said. At the tree, I knew it was mean, but I laughed anyway. And then I hated myself for it. You don't owe me guilt, Ginny said gently. Just honesty. And maybe a little of this cookie. Erin cracked a smile and handed her one. They ate in a shared silence that felt, finally, like comfort instead of caution. Outside, the snow had started again, light, slow, like someone shaking powdered sugar through a sieve. It softened the world, but didn't hide it. I'm gonna come around more, Erin said after a while. Even if Mom doesn't like it. I don't care. Ginny studied her face. The same blue eyes, but clearer now. Older, braver. You know that might start something, Erin shrugged. Then let it. Ginny reached over and touched her hand. Just once. A small thing, but steady. And for the first time in days, the pressure in her chest shifted. The pain was still there, still sharp, still echoing, but something was changing underneath it. The ache was turning into action, clarity moving in, like dawn. Later, when Erin had gone and the house was still again, Ginny returned to the notepad she'd left on the counter. Detachment, it still read at the top. She added a new line beneath the others. Slower this. Time, like a declaration. Update beneficiary forms. She capped the pen, then leaned against the counter, staring down the list like it was a blueprint for the person she was about to become. The folder felt heavier than it should have. Ginny held it close to her chest as she stepped into the law office, the warmth of the lobby catching her like a hand to the small of the back. The receptionist smiled politely, but Ginny barely noticed. Her eyes scanned the framed certificates on the wall, the quiet tick of the brass clock above the door. Time felt loud in here. Miss Callahan, the receptionist said gently. Greg will see you now. She nodded and followed her through the short hallway, heels muffled by the thick carpet. Everything smelled faintly like lemon polish and patience. Greg Thorne stood as she entered, gray at the temples now, thinner than she remembered, but still with that dry steadiness in his posture. A man who never panicked. Ginny, he said with a small warm smile. It's been a long time. Too long, she said, managing something close to polite. They shook hands, and she sat across from him. His office hadn't changed. The same mahogany desk, the same dark green leather chairs, the same skyline photo from a fishing trip he'd mentioned once. Stephen had hated that boat. She set the folder down and unlatched it. The papers inside were meticulously arranged. Her original will, medical directive, financial statements, insurance policies, and the house deed. Greg pulled them toward him, flipping through slowly, making quiet marks in the margins with a mechanical pencil. You've kept everything very organized, he said. I had help, Ginny replied. Back then, Greg nodded, eyes narrowing slightly, as he reached the fifth or sixth document. He paused, tapping the eraser end of the pencil against the page. He looked up. Leah Sanford, he said, voice neutral but precise. She's your primary executor, power of attorney, medical proxy, and sole heir. Ginny didn't move. Yes. Greg underlined Leah's name once, then circled it. He looked at her. You want this erased? She shook her head slowly. No, she said. I want her excluded. He studied her for a moment longer, and something in his expression shifted. Not pity, not surprise, just comprehension. Understood. He turned back to the documents. Who do you want as your new executor? Erin Wexler, Ginny said, sitting straighter. She's my niece. For everything? No, Ginny said. Personal items, yes. Family heirlooms, belongings, things with history. But not the estate. Greg raised an eyebrow, just slightly. And the financial assets. Charitable donation, she said. A trust, preferably. Something clean. He made notes without hesitation. Any cause in mind? Ginny exhaled, then smiled faintly. Women's advocacy, legal aid. Something that helps women leave. People like Leah. Greg chuckled under his breath, dry and approving. Now that's poetic. Ginny didn't laugh, but her lips twitched. He turned to his keyboard and began typing. The clacking of keys filled the space like a metronome. Drafts of new documents bloomed across the screen in legalese that sounded sterile but meant freedom. As he worked, Ginny glanced at the small side table near the window. There was a new photo in a silver frame. Greg and his daughter, older now, in a graduation gown. She remembered when that girl had been in middle school. Time had a way of sliding forward when you weren't looking. She wondered how much of her own time had been wasted walking behind someone like Leah, mistaking control for closeness. Greg cleared his throat softly. We'll need a notary for signatures, and I'll prepare a revocation affidavit for the original documents. Once signed, these become the new legal standard. Ginny nodded. Good. He paused again, pen resting against his palm. You sure you're ready for this? She looked at him, unwavering. Greg, I should have done this 3 years ago. He held her gaze for a long beat. Then he smiled. Well, he said, you're doing it now. The voicemail icon blinked like it had something urgent to say. Ginny stood in her living room, phone in hand, thumb hovering over the play button. The message was from Leah, time-stamped 9:12 p.m., just after business hours, as if she'd timed it to sound casual but carry weight. She tapped play. Ginny, I don't know what's going on with you lately, but... Her thumb hit delete. The message cut mid-sentence, and the icon disappeared. Clean, final. She stared at the phone for a second longer, then opened her contacts. Leah's name was still starred, still labeled ICE, emergency. She pressed edit, unfavorited. Then she scrolled to the bottom and hit remove from emergency contacts. Her heart didn't race. Her breath didn't hitch. It felt like brushing lint off her sleeve, small and overdue. Behind her, Della walked into the kitchen with a bowl of cereal in one hand and a Bluetooth speaker in the other. She paused when she saw the phone in Ginny's hand. Is that about her? She asked. Ginny turned the screen toward her. Not anymore. Della smiled a little. Want me to help with the medical contact stuff? Ginny hesitated, then nodded. Della set down her cereal and tapped through settings like she'd done it 100 times for friends' parents who never bothered to learn. You've got her listed on your health app too, Della said. Want me to clear it? Yes, Ginny said. Please. A few taps, gone. They finished in silence. When Della picked her cereal back up, she gave Ginny a glance that was small but proud, a quiet, solid thing. Thanks, honey, Ginny said. Della just nodded, mouth full of frosted flakes. Later that afternoon, Ginny stood in line at the bank, with a manila folder tucked under one arm. The branch smelled like toner and peppermint, the seasonal kind they pumped in through the vents. She'd worn a charcoal sweater and real boots. No more hiding behind leggings and puffers. When her name was called, she followed the teller to a small cubicle with a beige privacy wall and a silver stapler chained to the desk. I need to close a savings account, Ginny said, handing over her ID. The teller tapped the keyboard. The joint account ending in 3104? That's the one. He hesitated. Miss Sanford is also listed. We'll need her co-signature unless... Ginny slid another paper across the desk. The legal letterhead glinted faintly. Here's the revocation order, she said. Executed this morning. He skimmed the page, eyebrows lifting. Understood. One moment. While he typed, Ginny looked out the window at the row of bare trees across the street, their branches twitching against a flat gray sky. She could see her reflection in the glass, clearer than usual. Done, the teller said. Do you want to transfer the funds into an existing account? No, she said. I want to open a new one, under a trust. He blinked. You have the paperwork. She handed it over. The process took 20 minutes. When it was done, he passed her a temporary card and a folder with the account details. Anything else I can help you with today? No, Ginny said, standing. That's all. As she left, she felt it. The clean break. No shared access, no silent hooks, just her name, her signature, her terms. That evening, Ginny sat on the couch with her laptop open, signing the last of the digital forms Greg had sent. Most of them were basic: confirmations, acknowledgments, trust enrollment. But the last page caught her eye. Final delivery settings, email copy to self only. No family notifications, no executor alerts, suppress physical mailing. She read it twice, then clicked agree. The screen blinked, then loaded a green checkmark. She closed the laptop slowly, not with finality, but with clarity. The weight of Leah's presence, the way it had once coiled around her choices like ivy, was loosening. Not everything had to be a confrontation. Some things could just be removed. She stood, stretched, and walked to the kitchen. It was quiet except for the hum of the dishwasher and the faint sound of Della's music upstairs. The house finally felt like it belonged to them again. Erin sat cross-legged on the carpet, a worn cookie tin between her knees, flipping through old Polaroids. Ginny stood at the attic's far end, pulling open a cardboard box marked Holiday, Misk, in Leah's handwriting, an aggressively loopy scrawl she'd used even when labeling Ginny's own belongings. This one, Erin held up a picture, is me wearing a Christmas wreath like a tutu. You told me I looked like a cocktail garnish. Ginny glanced over and smiled. You did. Erin grinned, then grew quiet. The attic was warm for December, heavy with dust and insulation. But there was a softness to the silence, something easier than before. Can I ask something? Erin said, setting the photo down. Of course. All of this, what you're doing, does it feel like war or more like escape? Ginny didn't answer right away. She knelt beside another box and opened it slowly. Inside, a crystal vase Leah had once guilted her into holding onto, after mocking it, at her own bridal shower. A casserole dish Leah used once, scorched the bottom, and left behind accidentally. A porcelain figurine Ginny didn't even like, but had somehow moved with 3 times. She lifted it and set it aside, then turned to Erin. No, she said, calm. Everything I'm doing is quiet. It's not about proving anything. It's about making sure no one like her gets to rewrite the end of my story. Erin looked down, nodded. Okay, just checking. They kept sorting. Ginny made 2 piles, one for donation, items Leah had staked her name on without earning them, and one for Erin, books, jewelry, letters, a small cedar box Ginny had once hidden notes in when Stephen was alive. She placed it carefully in the keep bin. By mid-afternoon, half the attic floor was visible again. The other half had been boxed, labeled, and reclaimed. Downstairs, Ginny made mint tea while Erin loaded the boxes into her car. Later, alone in her study, Ginny opened her updated healthcare directive. She read it line by line, checking for any remaining mentions of Leah. There were none. Still, she scrolled slowly, just to be sure. Under emergency contact and medical proxy, primary, Della Callahan secondary, Sarah Downing, neighbor, tertiary, N.A. She tapped sign, confirmed, and watched the document seal itself electronically. It was strange, the finality of clicking a box. How something so clinical could feel like freedom. Her phone buzzed again, Greg Thorne. She picked up on the second ring. Ginny, it's all ready, he said. The final estate packet, safe certified. I'll email a digital copy, but I've also printed and archived the originals, per your instructions. Thank you, she said. Truly. There's a calmness to your decisions, he added. Most people swing toward either drama or avoidance. You're doing neither. I've lived on both ends, she said. This time, I'm choosing clarity. She hung up and went to the hall closet, where a small fire-safe box sat on the floor beneath old photo albums. Inside, she filed her newly printed estate packet, updated will, trust certificate, directive, financial assignments. All of it hers. All of it untouched by Leah's name. She closed the lid, locked it, and slid the box back into place. When she stood, there was no rush of adrenaline, no tearful relief, just quiet. And for Ginny, that was enough. The phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, Leah's name flashing across the screen like a reflex she no longer had. Ginny wiped her hands on a dish towel, glanced at it once, and walked away. The voicemail icon appeared 10 seconds later. She didn't bother checking it. Della, curled on the couch with a psychology textbook balanced against her knees, didn't even look up. Isn't it wild how they only call when it's about control? Ginny turned from the sink. She doesn't even realize she's not part of the story anymore. That's the worst part, Della said, eyes still on the page. She thinks she's the narrator. That made Ginny smile, not bitterly, just knowingly. There was no heat in it now, just air. By noon, a locksmith named Henry arrived. Mid-50s, sturdy, with calloused hands and a quiet efficiency. Ginny walked him through the job. Front door, side entrance, garage keypad. She didn't over-explain. He didn't ask. While he worked, she stood in the garage sorting through the last remnants of Leah's physical history in the house. An antique white dresser, a twin headboard with peeling floral decals, a mirror with rusting edges. Furniture Leah had insisted Ginny store just until I get a bigger place, then criticized every time she visited. Ginny pulled out her phone and opened the foster agency's site she'd bookmarked weeks ago. After 3 short forms and 1 call, the pickup was scheduled for tomorrow. No fanfare, no guilt, just space reclaimed. Henry knocked once on the doorframe. All set, ma'am. New pins, 3 sets of keys, garage keypad reset. Want me to walk you through it? Yes, please. She followed him to each lock, memorizing each motion, each sound. When he was gone, she pressed her palm to the deadbolt. Solid. Still. That afternoon, she sat at the dining table with a clean sheet of paper, her lawyer's mailing address, written neatly in the top corner. This was the analog copy. No login, no cloud, no trail. Just ink and intent. She copied the language from Greg's certified draft by hand. Not the full legal version, just the essentials. Executor, Aaron Wexler. Medical proxy, Della Callahan. Beneficiaries, Women's Legal Aid Trust. Personal assets, as listed in Addendum A. When she finished, she folded it twice, slipped it into an envelope, and tucked it in the fire safe beside the official documents. A second copy, just as intentional, would be mailed tomorrow. No one would be able to say they didn't know, and no one would be allowed to say they did, but ignored it. Later, as the light faded and shadows lengthened across the hardwood floor, Ginny brewed a second cup of coffee. Not because she needed it, just because she could. Della came into the kitchen, sock-footed, hair tied in a bun high on her head. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Are you going to tell her eventually? Ginny stirred her coffee, then set the spoon down. No, she said. Telling her would make it about her again. Della nodded, like she already knew the answer. Good. They stood in silence for a while, not tense, just still. Then Della pulled open the cabinet and reached for a mug. Can I have decaf? Ginny smiled. It's in the tin labeled green tea. Classic, Della said, opening it with a grin. It was these tiny exchanges Ginny felt most grateful for now. The quiet ones, the ones not stolen by performance or control. When the house settled that evening, locks changed. Alarm. Reset. Voicemail ignored. Ginny walked through the hallway slowly, turning off lights. No ghosts followed her. No voices waited behind doors. Just home, finally, just home. The email came through late Sunday afternoon. Just a single line from the university portal. Emergency contact updated. Virginia Callahan. Ginny stared at the screen for a full minute, unsure whether to smile or cry, or both. Then she simply nodded to herself and closed the laptop. She packed the box slowly, like she was wrapping a thought. Not gifts, not charity. Just things Aaron never asked for, but always ran low on. Granola bars, peppermint gum, tampons, a pack of thick black pens, ibuprofen, 2 pairs of wool socks, and a small jar of her favorite instant coffee. At the bottom, she added a Ziploc bag of the peanut butter cookies Ginny had made that morning. Not shaped into perfect circles like Leah used to do, just dropped with a spoon onto parchment and pressed down gently with a fork. No note. Just a neon yellow sticky on the inside of the lid. For your Mondays. Ginny parked half a block from the dorm to avoid the mess of weekend traffic. The campus trees were just beginning to flare red at the edges, and a group of students passed by in sweatshirts and flip-flops, clutching iced coffees like a religion. Ginny waited until the flow cleared, walked up the steps, and buzzed the front desk. The RA didn't even ask questions, just took the box and nodded politely. Back in her car, Ginny turned the engine, then didn't move. For a few seconds, she just sat with her hands on the wheel, heart pacing like it used to before closing arguments in court. Not fear, just the weight of wanting to get something right. That night, around 9:17 p.m., her phone vibrated once. A heart emoji. No words, no name, but it was enough. She didn't reply. Instead, she walked to the hall closet, unlocked the small safe tucked behind the vacuum, and slid in the newest document. A notarized letter from Aaron, signed and witnessed, requesting Ginny as her medical power of attorney until graduation. Della sat at the dining table, flipping through a battered paperback, when Ginny returned. "You good?" she asked, not looking up. Ginny placed the key back on its hook and nodded. "Yeah." Della's eyes scanned the page in front of her like she was measuring something beneath the words. Then, without lifting her head, she murmured, "Funny how one sentence can change a whole will." Ginny let out a soft breath. It really can. She didn't say which sentence she was thinking of, but in her mind, it wasn't a legal clause or a courtroom promise. It was Aaron's voice, weeks ago, breaking open over the phone. "If anything ever happens, I want it to be you." She hadn't asked for permission, she had given her title, and Ginny had taken it, quietly, without ceremony, without needing a single signature to tell her it was real. Della stood, stretched, and tossed her book onto the couch. "Want tea?" "Sure," Ginny said. She listened to the kettle start its slow whistle, watched the steam rise, curl, and vanish. Something in her had shifted. Not a final click, not yet, but the tumblers were moving. She reached for her phone to set a reminder about mailing Aaron's care box the following month. But before she could open the calendar, a different notification flashed across the screen. Leah. 2 missed calls. 1 voicemail. Then a second one, still fresh. Gregory left a message. Her stomach didn't lurch, her hand didn't shake, but she didn't press play either. She turned off the phone completely, dropped it onto the kitchen counter, and walked away. From behind her, Della called out, "Was that the kettle or your past catching fire?" Ginny smiled to herself. "Both." And then, just before she reached the hallway light, the doorbell rang. Twice. Slow, intentional. And Ginny wasn't expecting anyone. Ginny opened the front door just wide enough to see the envelope. Cream-colored, thick, with her full name written in Leah's long, angular script. No return address. No note. Just weight in the hand and old meaning in the ink. She stood there a moment in the dim porch light, not moving, not thinking, then closed the door softly and walked it straight to the shredder in the home office. No pause, no ceremony, just a clean mechanical hum as the blades took it apart. Della didn't ask. She'd seen the mailbox open. She'd watched Ginny cross the hall with the envelope, like it was nothing more than recycling. Ginny didn't flinch once, not even when the last strip vanished. Instead, she walked to the kitchen, brewed a pot of coffee, and sat at the table with a blank notebook and a Pilot G2. Across the top of the page, she wrote the title slowly, clearly, like a headline she wasn't afraid of anymore. "No one for me." It wasn't about loneliness, not the version people like to pity. It was about the quiet acceptance of choosing not to hand yourself over to the wrong people, again and again, hoping they'd return the favor with gentleness. She wrote for an hour. The room was still. The words came without dragging. By the time Della wandered in, yawning and barefoot, Ginny had filled 6 pages in neat, careful print. "You're up late," Della said, reaching for the kettle. Ginny capped her pen. Felt like telling the truth. The next day, she read the piece aloud at her local writing group, tucked in the back room of the library, where folding chairs creaked, and everyone brought their own tea bags and Ziplocs. She didn't expect a reaction. She didn't want one. But when she finished, the group leader, a retired editor with silver braids and mercilessly sharp feedback, took a long breath and said, "That was quiet devastation, but with clarity." Ginny nodded once, grateful but unmoved. She wasn't there for approval. She was there to mark a moment. Later that afternoon, she printed, 2 copies of the piece, one to bring back next week and one to place in the fire safe, tucked between the notarized forms and the handwritten addendums. A story kept close. Not for court, not for conflict, just for record. She was refiling the last folder when her phone rang. Greg's name. She almost let it go to voicemail, but didn't. She answered on the 3rd ring, her tone calm, even, as if they'd spoken yesterday. "It's done," he said without introduction. "Revisions are filed. The addendums notarized. The executor roles are locked in. You're untouchable now. No contest possible." Ginny closed the safe door gently. "Good. You sure you want to keep it sealed?" Greg asked. "Some people." "I'm sure." He hesitated, then said, "It's the cleanest file I've ever seen." She gave a quiet laugh. "That's because it wasn't written in fear this time." Greg chuckled. "You're not the same woman who walked into my office 8 months ago." "No," she said. "I'm not." They hung up after a few more lines, professional, warm, but brief. Ginny returned the phone to its cradle and stared out the living room window, where dusk had already begun to darken the edges of the hedges. In the silence, something clicked. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. She walked to her desk, pulled out a fresh note card, and scribbled something quickly before tucking it into the inside flap of her will folder, not to be read, just to be found. Then the sound came again. Not from the front door this time, from upstairs. A distinct thud, not a creak or a house-settling sigh. This was a weight. Something or someone was in the house. Ginny froze. Her hand hovered over the drawer with the flashlight. Not afraid, just listening. Upstairs, the hallway light was off. Ginny moved slowly, silently, flashlight still in her hand but unlit. Her feet knew the floorboards well enough not to need it. At the top of the stairs, she paused and listened again. Nothing. Then a creak. But this time it was Della's door opening. Della blinked sleepily, blanket draped around her shoulders. "Did you hear that too?" Ginny nodded. "Just checking." They moved together through the hall, soft and careful. But every door was closed, every latch untouched. No broken windows, no signs of intrusion. The attic door was still sealed shut. Back in the hallway, Della whispered, "Maybe just the old vents." "Maybe," Ginny said, but didn't believe it. They didn't talk about it again. But the next morning, Ginny double-checked every lock, reset the motion sensors, and added a second camera to the back entrance. By noon, Leah's presence returned, but not as footsteps in the dark. This time, she arrived through someone else. Aaron. Ginny was at her desk, organizing donation receipts, when the text buzzed in. "Aaron." Leah showed up outside the library. "I didn't talk long." Ginny held her breath for the next line. "Aaron. I told her it's between you and your lawyer. No apology, no panic. Just calm, adult boundary setting." Ginny exhaled, her eyes glassing with something between pride and grief. She didn't respond. Aaron didn't expect her to, but Leah did. That night, the inbox filled like a floodplain. Text after text, subject line after subject line. "We need to talk. Please let me explain. What did you tell her? This isn't over." One voicemail came in just after midnight, then another at 3:12 a.m. The subject line on her last email read simply, "This was supposed to be mine." Ginny opened none of it. She deleted nothing. She just archived everything into a folder named Audit Trail. Not out of spite, out of record. What she did open, though, was the manila folder marked Advanced Directives. She hadn't looked at it in over a year, but now her hands moved with practiced grace. She updated the DNR, clarified language around life support, added a new line about palliative sedation, just in case. She signed it in blue ink, dated it, initialed the margins. Then she reached for the good stationery, the kind with thick cotton fiber, and wrote a final note. Short, formal, almost cold. "To whom it may concern. This file reflects my full and final wishes. There is no appeal." She sealed the envelope with wax, marked it in block letters, "No appeal," and placed it into the fire safe, on top of every other document. Afterward, she made herself chamomile tea and sat at the kitchen table, watching the steam twist like breath leaving a body. Somewhere in the house, a draft moved through the vents again. She didn't jump. She simply stared at the front door, closed, locked, fortified. Then her phone buzzed again. Not Leah. Not Greg. Unknown caller. No caller ID. The timestamp read 4:44 a.m. It rang again, and this time, a voicemail was left. The voicemail was 36 seconds long. Ginny never played it. She had her own rules now, rules that didn't hinge on curiosity or closure. Still, she saved it. Labeled it Leah, final attempt, unheard, in her backups. By Friday morning, the real move came. Not a call, not an email. A courier envelope, hand-delivered, signature required. Della brought it in from the front step, eyebrows raised. "Do you want me to open it?" Ginny took it gently. "No," she said. "I already know what it says." She slid it open with the letter opener from her legal days, brass-handled, worn smooth from years of conference room contracts and custody battles. Inside was a formal request from a law firm 3 counties over, asking, on behalf of Leah Callahan, for access to the original version of the will. Phrased politely, lined with enough legalese to feign legitimacy, but at its core, an accusation dressed as inquiry. Ginny scanned it once, then again. Then she opened a new message to Greg, attached a photo of the letter, and typed just 2 words, her move. Greg called less than an hour later. "Well," he said, voice low and dry. "She hired from the bottom shelf. Desperate or cheap?" "Both." Ginny allowed herself a thin smile. "I assume you've got this." Greg chuckled. Already sent over competency records, revision timestamps, witness logs, and the sealed trust registration. The whole cathedral of proof. They'll be drowning in it by lunch. "She won't back off," Ginny said. "Not a question, a recognition." "No," Greg agreed, "but her lawyer just might." 2 days later, the courier came back, this time with nothing but a single-page withdrawal notice from Leah's counsel. Effective immediately, no explanation. Ginny didn't bother smiling this time. She just pulled the safe open and added the entire packet. Leah's request, Greg's reply, the withdrawal notice, all tabbed and dated. Della stood in the hallway watching her, a glass of water in one hand. "That's it? For now. She's not going to like this." Ginny slid the folders back into place. She was never going to like anything that didn't end in her name on a check. Della nodded, then took a long drink. "Still, kind of wild to watch someone try to rewrite your story from the outside." Ginny didn't answer. She didn't need to. Later that night, a text came through from Erin. "She's furious. Said I was manipulated. Called me a pawn. Said you poisoned me against her." Ginny stared at the words for a long time before typing back. "Fury doesn't move paper." Then she hit send and powered off her phone for the night. But the silence didn't hold. At 2:41 a.m., Ginny sat up straight in bed, eyes wide open, fully alert. No sound had woken her. No vibration, no crash, just knowing. She rose, moved barefoot to the hallway, checked the stairwell, empty. Locks still bolted, monitors still green. But something was different. Downstairs, on the kitchen table, a single object sat where Ginny knew she hadn't left it. Her writing notebook. Open. Turned to the last page she'd written. And in the margin, in handwriting that wasn't hers, one word, liar. She didn't touch the notebook. Not the next morning. Not that week. Instead, she took it directly to the fire safe, slid it under the stack of legal documents, and relocked the drawer without reading another page. Whatever message Leah had tried to scratch into her life, it wasn't welcome here. Not in handwriting, not in memory. 3 days later, Ginny texted Greg a single question. What would it take to sell quietly? The reply came fast. A good realtor and no online listings. I know a guy. By the following Tuesday, the papers were signed. No yard sign, no open house, no staging. Just a pre-qualified buyer, a young couple from Oregon relocating for tech jobs, charmed by the garden and the built-ins. Oblivious to the ghosts. Ginny didn't bother repainting. She didn't fix the one creaky stair or the tiny crack by the back door. The house didn't need to be perfect. It only needed to be someone else's. Erin was the first to know. Ginny drove up to campus on a crisp, bright morning and handed her a key over coffee. "This is my new address," she said, slipping a folded paper across the table. "Don't give it out, not even to well-meaning people." Erin looked down at the neat handwriting, the condo number tucked beneath the new street. Then back at Ginny. "You okay?" she asked, quiet. Ginny stirred her coffee once, then let the spoon rest. "I don't need to win anymore. I just need to live somewhere Leah can't find the door." Erin didn't press. She just nodded, placed the key in her backpack, and squeezed Ginny's hand once before they parted. The condo was on the 10th floor of a building with a doorman and thick concrete walls. No backyard, no attic, no drafty hallways for messages to sneak through. Just clean sunlit space and wide windows facing west. Della helped her move in. They brought nothing that hadn't earned its place. New dishes, a solid oak desk, a couch without history. Ginny bought a bed frame from a woman on Craigslist, who swore it had never belonged to anyone but her. She left behind every single family photo. Not out of malice, just clarity. The people in them no longer lived in the rooms she walked through. Only one item from the old house made the trip: the fire safe. Everything else stayed. And on her final day there, Ginny did not take a last walk through the house. She didn't open the closets. She didn't linger in doorways, hoping to feel something like farewell. Instead, she walked out the front door at exactly 8 a.m., dropped the keys in the realtor's lockbox, and left without looking back. She left a note inside the mailbox, sealed, taped shut. To whom it may concern. This address no longer belongs to the version of me you're looking for. Please forward your demands to memory. No signature. The mailbox was padlocked. At the condo, she hung no photos, no memories pinned to walls, only a single print above the kitchen sink. Abstract, watercolors, no figures, just motion. That night, as she settled into the new silence, Della called. "Feels different?" she asked. Ginny looked around the bare, soft-lit space. "Feels like no one can reach me unless I open the door." "Good," Della said. Ginny almost smiled. But then, a knock. 3 soft raps, deliberate. Too light to be a neighbor. Too late for deliveries. She stood, heart not racing, but attentive. Crossed to the peephole. Looked. No one. She waited. Still nothing. Then she turned back toward the apartment. And there, slipped under the door like a whisper, a single envelope. No name, no return address. Just one word on the front. Remember. The envelope sat on the counter for 2 full days. Ginny never opened it. By the 3rd, she dropped it into the shredder the same way she had with all the others, steady, unflinching, a ritual now more about release than defense. That afternoon, she called Greg. "Time to finalize the trust," she said. He didn't ask what prompted it. Greg had learned long ago that Ginny only spoke when the decision was already carved in stone. They met in his office downtown, neutral carpet, polished walnut table, framed certificates that smelled faintly of varnish and power. He closed the blinds before they began, more out of respect than secrecy. "I've updated the allocation," Ginny said, sliding a typed page across the desk. Greg read silently. The list was simple, clinical. 80%, Margaret Wexler, Memorial Scholarship Fund. Supporting adult women re-entering college education, named not for Ginny, not for Leah, not for anyone who might try to claim legacy. Greg looked up. "Margaret Wexler, that was your mother's maiden name, wasn't it?" "Yes." Ginny's voice was soft, measured. "She didn't get to finish her degree. Life, circumstance, marriage. This makes the ending hers instead of mine." He nodded slowly, pen resting in his hand. "And Erin's role?" "Symbolic steward," Ginny said. "Not legal guardian. She oversees the spirit, not the spreadsheets." Greg smiled faintly. "You always did know how to balance heart and law." Ginny shook her head. "No, I just learned the price of sentimentality." He made a small notation in the margin. "Any press release?" "No," she said firmly. "No announcements, no donor page, no plaques. The money does its work quietly, or not at all." Greg leaned back, studying her for a long moment. "You've thought of everything." "I had a lot of time to think," she replied. Eyes fixed on the window where dusk was deepening into that gray-blue hour she'd always loved, when the world hadn't yet decided between day and night. They signed the papers in triplicate, initials, stamps, witness signatures. By the time Ginny stepped out of the office, the city was alive with headlights and crosswalk beeps. She took a slow breath and walked 3 blocks before calling a cab home, watching her reflection blur against the glass. No fanfare, no satisfaction, just completion. 3 weeks later, a foundation blog post appeared on a small community site, the Margaret Wexler Scholarship Fund, empowering women to begin again. It had been quietly filed through Greg's channels, linked to the Women's Legal Aid Trust for transparency. Leah found it through a friend's repost. The post listed no contact name, no donor bio, only the mission and the words, endowed in perpetuity through a private bequest. Within an hour, Leah's profile lit up with a single furious comment beneath the article. "She's not who you think she was." The comment was deleted before the hour was up. Erin saw it, though. She texted Ginny late that night. "She knows." Ginny typed back one word. "Good." Then she turned off her phone, set it face down on the table, and walked to the window. The city pulsed below, traffic, sirens, motion. But she stood still, her reflection doubled in the glass. On the counter behind her, the fire safe's red indicator light blinked once, then twice. A power surge, maybe, or something else. She reached to unplug it, and froze, because next to it, on the clean marble surface where nothing ever sat out of place, lay another envelope. Identical cream paper. No return address. This one marked, in narrow blue pen, Margaret Wexler. She never opened the envelope marked Margaret Wexler. She slid it into the safe, unread, unsorted, unshaken. Not everything deserved oxygen. December arrived without ceremony. No snowfall, just that brittle cold unique to city windows and sidewalk steam. Ginny let the month pass without the usual calculations. No cards, no errands, no forced nostalgia. Erin called a week before Christmas. "I don't want to go home," she said plainly. Ginny, still in her robe, half watching the kettle boil, answered, "Then don't." They didn't make plans, just an understanding. Erin showed up on the 24th with a duffel bag, 3 used paperbacks, and a container of matzo ball soup she'd made in her dorm's shared kitchen. Ginny met her at the door with warm socks and 0 questions. No tree, just soft light from the condo windows and a string of white bulbs she looped around the curtain rod at dusk. It was enough, more than. They didn't exchange gifts. Instead, they handed each other small envelopes, plain, unsealed. Erin's handwriting wavered slightly, like she'd written it quickly, maybe late at night. But the words were clear. "You never had to love me. You chose to. That's what saved me." Ginny read it twice before speaking. "I'm framing this," she said softly, and meant it. Erin wiped at one eye, half smiling. "Don't make it weird." "I won't." Ginny's letter was shorter. "You were never a replacement. You were the point." Neither said much after that. But the quiet was full, not heavy. They spent the afternoon with soup and books, blankets pulled up to their chins, reading in parallel silence. When Erin dozed off, Ginny marked her page and tucked a throw over her legs. Just after sunset, the doorbell rang. On the floor outside sat a cardboard bakery box and a folded note. "You don't need permission anymore. This is your chapter now." D. Inside. A perfect bourbon pecan pie. Ginny placed the note on the fridge with a single magnet. Not centered. Just there. Present. She didn't check her phone all day. When she did, just before bed. There were no texts from Leah, no missed calls, no disguised voicemails. And for the first time in years, there was no ache in the absence, no grief, no false hope, just clean air where expectation used to sit. She turned off her phone, reached for Erin's letter and slid it into a frame, right beside her desk lamp. The paper looked stark against the glass, unapologetic, earned. Ginny stood there a long time, studying it. Then, without meaning to, her eyes drifted to the safe, to the folder where the envelope with Margaret Wexler still lay. She didn't reach for it, but she didn't turn away either, because for the first time she wondered not what Leah had written, but how she had known the name. She waited until the new year to do it. Not because of tradition or resolutions. Ginny had long stopped pretending the calendar carried power, but because endings deserve clarity. And January, in its cold stillness, offered that. She pulled the fire safe onto the table and opened it like a vault of her own making. Inside, law, proof, finality. No chaos, no clutter, just the facts, arranged by hand, not fear. She sorted everything into labeled folders with thick tabs and clear spines. Will, trust, directive, letters, audit trail. The last one, letters, held three things: Erin's framed note, a copy of Ginny's response, and the Margaret Wexler envelope, still sealed. She didn't touch it, but she didn't remove it either. Let it stay, suspended like a pin in a map she no longer needed to follow. After she closed the safe, she opened her paper planner, the only one she trusted, heavy with cream pages and fine-ruled lines, and wrote on the first week of January, no calls, no expectations, no guilt. She underlined each line twice, then closed the planner and placed it on her desk like a signed contract with herself. That afternoon, she took her coffee to the patio. 10 floors up, city noise didn't reach the same way. It rose in waves, distant and soft-edged. She read a mystery novel with no moral arc, no poetic justice, just characters making choices and living with the fallout. For the first time in her adult life, Ginny didn't think about family, not the one she had, not the one she lost, and not the one that had failed to return the favor of being born. She didn't hear about the scholarship ceremony until after it happened. Greg had texted a photo, just a low-resolution image from the community college auditorium. A few women in cardigans stood beside a folding sign that read, "Margaret Wexler Scholarship, begin again." Ginny didn't ask who spoke, if anyone cried, or whether Leah had learned about it. That wasn't her role anymore. What mattered was that the fund was live, working, quietly undoing something. Erin visited every Thursday now, not scheduled, just rhythm. She never brought groceries or asked probing questions. Sometimes she read on the couch. Sometimes they watched old legal dramas and laughed at the deposition scenes. She wasn't Ginny's nurse. She wasn't Ginny's heir. She was simply there. One afternoon, as they sat on opposite sides of the same silence, Ginny spoke without warning. "I'm not angry," she said, voice calm, eyes on the window. "I'm just done." Erin didn't answer right away. She didn't need to. That night, after Erin left, Ginny lit one candle on the kitchen table and wrote down the final line she'd been carrying for months. She wrote it in her notebook, the same one that once bore Leah's handwriting in the margin. This time, the words were hers, firm, measured, unflinching. "At Christmas, my daughter said, 'Don't touch the gifts, there's none for you,' so I took back everything she thought she deserved. And I never wrapped her name in anything again." She read it once, aloud, and didn't cry. Just closed the notebook, and this time, finally, left it open on her desk.